Once upon a time, there was a duck pond, and on the duck pond, the ducks threw themselves a party. They were having all manner of fun, doing the things that the ducks like to do. And there was a goose flying near the duck pond and saw all the fun that was going on over on the pond and decided to land next to the pond. Slowly, over time, inch their way into the water, closer and closer, falling in love with all of the wonderful things that were happening. But the thing is, the goose needed to remember that it wasn't a duck, and that while the ducks may have let it come to the party, it was the duck's party, and the goose needed to respect that. Today, we're going to be talking about culture and music as a weapon of the spirit, how the Black arts have been used as a tool of liberation in this country and in the world. And as a visitor to this culture, I am very mindful of my place in this discussion and in proximity to it. So let's remember, for those of us who are not born into this culture, we're just some geese on the pond. We need to remember it's the ducks party. So let's talk about music and culture as liberation as we walk together down creation's path. Hello, everyone. My name is Charlie. I am a Christo-Pagan druid and priest of Bridget.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brian. I'm a Christo-Pagan druid and sous chef to the Dogdo.
I don't know where that analogy came from that I started this episode with, but I got it from Professor Sky. It is a very good analogy to understand what's going on here. That I have an appreciation for all manner of African American music and culture, but I just am lacking the experience to fully be able to contextualize and discuss this with any of the richness that it truly deserves. For that, I highly recommend you check out some people we talked about in the last episode. FD Signifier, ABSA does a very good job with this. The Company Man, Curtis King, people like that who can really dig in. Rap Latte is a very good source for this with Bore. Just remember, you're hearing this from somebody who visited the party. I am not going to be the best spokesman for this, but I think that we should celebrate and really embrace the wonderful art and culture that we have gotten from our African American siblings, sisters, and brothers. But before we get into all that, if you haven't already, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, whatever the terminology happens to be on whatever platform you're listening to us on. We do 5 original Christo-Pagan and Druid episodes Monday through Friday, and we're just about to start our Druidcraft 101 series, so you really don't want to miss a thing. And we're going to be celebrating Black History Month all month too, so definitely hit that subscribe, and let's just get into it, shall we? One of the biggest problems that I think that we as white Americans need to acknowledge is almost every part of our culture was appropriated from Black culture. And I mean that from the styles of a lot of the styles of humor that we have, a lot of the stories that we've accepted culturally, but especially our music. It is impossible to find an American style of music that was not originated or pioneered by African Americans. Maybe bluegrass, because that tends to come from the Scotch Irish migrations. Maybe. But even there, I'm sure we could find some early examples that of people that really meant something to the movement. I mean that literally everything from country music, blues to jazz to rock and roll, which is just an extension of blues. And then rock splintered into so many different genres in and of itself, from heavy metal to hard rock to the various alternative genres that are out there. And that's not even getting into gospel and soul and funk and R&B, which shouldn't really be a genre because R&B was just where they put the Black musicians so that they wouldn't be in the pop category. If you're not aware, that is a remnant of segregation that we have kept around, but it has kind of turned into its own genre over time. But that's
even to that one, the whole beef last year between Kendrick and Drake. Part of the underlying bit of that was Drake was pop and would be best if he just stayed pop instead of trying to be rap, because the language is hip hop. And so there was all this confusion because if it didn't have to be segregated, it would have been just rap and pop. You know, there wouldn't be all this other confusion in there. But they're like they had to segregate these other categories, the pop category out.
And they did over and over and over and over again. And when I say that, like, we wouldn't have a culture with if it wasn't for African Americans, that's not me just kind of bending the knee or anything like that. I can't think of a thing that I love that doesn't have somewhere in its origin story or a significant game changer who just changed everything about that genre and made it what it is today, that didn't come from the African American community. And primarily, I'm kind of focused here on music because the music has been what has held our people together for so long. And the music that we have inherited is this music of triumph in face of struggle, of this working against the grain, this kind of this we think of it as an American identity, but it really isn't an American identity. It's the African American identity of this kind of bristling against authoritarianism and power that we have inherited through the gospel music that we got, the blues music that we got, all the way up to the hip hop that we have today, that quintessential American idea, which apparently isn't so American in some people's eyes, of not just bowing to authority, not just giving in to the powers that be, that respect for liberation that was so core and key to everything that made us who we are really does come from those sources. And it is a shame. And I often wonder what history would have looked like if, we would have had Big Mama Thornton's Hound Dog instead of Elvis's. Like
Mm.
if it didn't have to be re-recorded and appropriated to have that wider audience. And I'm not saying that it had to and that it had to. It's just the way the machine and the system was set up. If she could have just had the career that she deserved. And we can say that over and over again for so many of these musicians that were limited in the places that they could go and the venues that they could perform to and the audiences that were allowed to see them. What our country would have or could have looked like if we had actually embraced all of those ideals that we like to say out loud of being a melting pot, because we sure didn't like that pot melting for a really long time, and we seem to be back in a spot where it's like people are wanting to put it in a centrifuge and separate it back out.
If you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. I love that phrase. This is definitely part of that. I have problems with really bad movies. If I see a really bad movie, I will purge it from my memory, which is wonderful because I don't have to waste memory space, time, or energy on a really bad movie. It's gone. It just ceases to exist for me. The downside of that is because I don't remember my history of watching and experiencing that really bad movie. There are times where I'll be like, Charlie, let's watch this. And Charlie's like, we watched it. It was horrible. You hated it. And I'm like, I don't remember that at all. Literally doomed to repeat because I don't remember that history. And this is why it's so important to take this time and acknowledge this history because people now are trying to lie to us to tell us that these peoples aren't important in our culture and music. And it's like, no, like last year, Kendrick's music was so important for the culture of this country, for setting
It
that tone of
was
feel
so that
everyone was
there's
going through.
I know that there were a lot of people that may have not been paying attention to the beef that was happening last year or any of that, but I don't think there's a single person in this country like I mean, you almost had to work at it to not hear, not like us, to not hear GNX, any of the songs off of GNX that came out last year. You almost had to work hard to keep yourself from being exposed to that, like Luther. And you may think, well, I haven't heard any of that. We have done 2 episodes of this podcast dedicated to songs from that album, from Squabble Up to a song that I misnamed in the episode. And I feel bad about it because I called it I Deserve It All. And the song's called Man in the Garden, but it repeats I Deserve It All so much that I keep thinking that that's the name of the song. And that's me being a bad visitor to the culture. We've touched on songs like Luther just because they were so inspirational and so powerful. Luther to me is the song of right now. If it were up to me, I wouldn't give nobody no sympathies. I take away their pain. I would give them everything if this world were mine. I feel that in my bones. I feel that in my heart and my soul and my identity that like that is where I am. That's who I am. That is the spirit we need right now. And if you haven't heard Luther from GNX, it's Kendrick Lamar and SZA with samples from Luther Vandross and just it is to me the best song from last year. It is my absolute favorite song from last year, and I still can't stop listening to it. And that's because it's spoke not only to the moment, but it's fun to listen to, it's fun to sing along to, and it just goes right to the heart of where we are. And that's what this music has always been. That's I I grew up in the white evangelical church, and most of our Sunday mornings were singing really, really badly gospel songs and various spirituals that we had, let's just generously say, borrowed from the black church. There were a few old standards in there as well. A lot of the music that we were singing because of the choir director and all, they were listening to contemporary gospel music. And so they were trying to take those songs and bring them into into our church. And we didn't have we didn't have the heart and the rhythm for it, but we tried so hard. That's what I'm talking about though. I knew this was going to be a hard episode to record because there's so much I want to say and so much that is just hard to say, because part of me wants this just to be an episode dedicated to just railing against the cultural appropriation that kept me from finding out about all of these incredible artists whose songs that I love, but didn't know because of the culture that I grew up in. I only got the cleaned up, appropriated versions of those songs. I didn't hear the originals until much later.
And also the systems of oppression that went, "Oh, this is just angry black music. You don't need to listen to it because they're just angry and violent and thugs, and there's no redeeming value." That was also a lie, another system of oppression, because there was and is a lot of, like, rap especially, just growing up, that was cast in a very negative light.
Oh, it was.
And it was like, no, no, there was Tupac, and even, like, even NWA, who, had a lot of angry lyrics and stuff, they were still rapping about the oppression, the systems of oppression, and they were fighting against those systems.
Check D, fight
And
the power,
yeah, yeah, very much.
public
And
enemy.
it was like, "Oh, okay."
Oh, but see, that okay to me, oh, it just hurt my soul having to try to walk people there because when the Black Lives Matter movement broke into public consciousness, and I heard so many people saying, well, had no idea stuff like this was going on. And I'm like, but Tupac was rapping about this in the 90s and
Yeah.
NWA in the 80s and all the way back to the Sugar Hill Gang in the 70s. Like, did you not even pay attention to the message? Like, Keem had been talking about this. This has been there the whole time with people talking about this. Nina Simone in the 60s, Etta James in the 50s and 60s was singing about this. And it's the same song. It's just people weren't paying attention. And that I think is the greatest sin of our country is that we're not paying attention. And we're too busy trying to figure out how to profit off of this culture and that culture and how to appropriate it and commodify it and make it work for business and industry or to fit into our free time and fun time. And we're missing the heart, the soul that has been there the whole time for people to see and hear. You know, it's not been a
This
secret.
Yeah, it hasn't, and that's that whole thing when, when fighting against principalities and powers, one of the biggest tools and biggest secrets that people often miss is dreaming of a different system. Being able to go, "You know what? This system is bad. There's no," it exists to further itself, so any means of trying to work with it is going to only become subject to it and a slave to that system. So, since it's a bad system, why don't I just try to dream of a new system? Be creative enough to step out and try to see the world in a completely different light, and that like I have a dream speech was about that very thing of going, hey, let's just dream of an entirely different system to live under. You
And
know,
it's so
the scarcity, that the whole scarcity thing, like that doesn't have to be the system we live under. We could actually dream of a completely different system.
And it's so frustrating that that's where people stop with Dr. King, who was
Mhm.
out there arm in arm with everyone struggling. Because, yes, the civil rights movement needed to break Jim Crow, and the Voting Rights Act needed to happen. But if we're not out there fighting for an equal wage and equal, like true equality, if we're not out there
Yeah,
fighting for a decent wage for everybody and for proper overtime hours and the whole thing, we're losing. We're losing the entire fight.
yeah, because that oppression and the liberation from oppression, the oppression's real. It doesn't have to necessarily just be race oppression. It could be gender oppression, because you're female or perceived female and treated, you know, oppressed, with mansplaining and all the other stuff that goes into that, or economic oppression, you know, where you're viewed as a poor and treated as a poor, uh, you know, and oppressed by those that feel they're above you because they feel they have that economic superiority, and on and on and on. And that's also where a lot of the power comes from, the culture and music, because you know black oppression has run for so long, especially in this country. So a lot of that is about liberation from that oppression.
And it's so clear that you can't not see the system. And yeah, I said a
Hmm.
double negative on like
Yep.
it's so visible, it's so clear. And those songs of protest, those songs of defiance, those songs of strength, and those songs of joy. Like we can't
Yes.
miss those songs of just pure joy that just define our eras, that define our history, that define us as a people and really make the whole world move. You know, we're here on this first quarter moon in the Via Creativa trying to celebrate culture. And we have someone like a oh, I don't even want to say her name. I don't even want to give her that much time. I'm just gonna say it because it'll be so much more upsetting to her. The lady who sang the national anthem for the inauguration, being upset that she wasn't treated with the same zeal as a Beyonce. And the thing is, Beyonce earned that. You didn't. Like, I remember Destiny's Child. I remember the come up. I remember how I fell in love with Beyonce and how her music changed and grew and she became this powerhouse. I remember that. I also remember her career, this little Miss Lady Karen. Sorry, cut that out. This little Karen over here who is complaining that she's not being treated with that same gravitas. I remember your career. I remember your come up. You you haven't. You got like 3, 4 songs that are good. You got some all right ones, but you haven't done a classic. But yet alone a classic on top of a classic on top of a classic, and that is what we need to be struggling against is this sense of entitlement of, well, I'm also a celebrity, therefore I am entitled to what this black celebrity got. No, 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 no. A Beyonce earned her place. We can talk about how she got into the industry and all that, but man, she has worked hard to be where she is. And the last run of albums, starting at Lemonade, have made her into the dominant force that she is at in just culture in general. And if you're not putting out that body of work and not building that quality of work, you're not going to get the same respect. You're not entitled to that. And that's the other half of this that we need to be seeing is when that entitlement tries to creep in here.
It's, once again, it's gonna be hard for me not to bring up Gen X all the time here, just because, and that is part of the stuff that's covered and reincarnated that
Yes.
even Kendrick wrestles with in that song. It was so, it's a beautiful piece of creativity right there, where he has that whole thing. You say you're the goat, but what have you actually done to earn title of being greatest of all time? Are you really greater than these other people? know, do you even stand on the same level as these other people? because you're trying to say you're the greatest of all time. Like, are you even on their level? Not on their level. Go home. Go home and work on it.
Yeah, it was very hard not to just make this the GNX episode because it
Oh
it
yeah.
it is really the album of our time because it says so much of what needs to be said right now. From Luther to Man in the Garden to turn the TV off, squabble up,
Turn
like
the TV off is like was my song for the week after the inauguration. Like
yeah,
that was my song for that week, just because there was just so much nonsense going on, and that's a good chunk of that song is like there's so much nonsense going on, crazy, spooky, scary, stupid stuff going
no,
on.
hilarious. The
All
last word is
well,
hilarious.
yeah,
Crazy,
hilarious.
crazy,
You know,
scary, hilarious.
yeah, that like, I started adding extra adjectives into it because it was a lot that week. It
It
was a
was.
lot, but
It
it
was.
was just like, that song was written before there was even, a second president, President Trump in his second term. That was not necessarily a thing at that point in time. And it's just like that song was so
But
much
that
that week. Turn the TV off. It's just like, sometimes you just gotta, go out and touch grass.
But that's the power of creativity. In
Hmm.
the last episode, like I said, I kind of threw out our script halfway through because I felt that awe and that inspiration that, like I said, the spirit hit me, and I had to go in a different direction. And that thundercrap of inspiration is the voice of God. Like that is the voice of God in this world. And so when I hear somebody like Kendrick refer to himself as a prophet, yes, and I would apply that language to a lot of musicians and a lot of artists and a lot of writers, and a lot of them that wouldn't apply that to themselves. Because if you are, now this is a very uh, creation spirituality way of seeing this term, but a prophet is anyone who interferes with the systems of injustice. If you are doing anything to be a hindrance, to interfere, you're acting as a prophet. Anytime you're just putting something in the cogs to slow it down, even, you are acting as a prophet. Each and every one of us, Christian spirituality teaches us, is an artist, a mystic, and a prophet. All of us. I am, Brian is, everyone listening to the sound of my voice. You are a mystic, meaning that you have access to this deeper reservoir within yourself, this deeper reservoir of the cosmos, that you are interconnected with all things and can have that intimacy with the universe. You are a artist in whatever form that is for you, whether that's being a musician, a storyteller, a cook, caretaker, whatever it is. You're an artist. I would say a lot of our lawyers out there are artists, and some of them are using their arts for the dark side. And we need to call that out when we see it. But we're also all prophets. We have that ability to stand up and be a person that interferes with injustice. And the beauty that I see coming through the jazz tradition, the blues tradition, the hip hop, R&B, soul, gospel. I could go on and on forever in all of the musical contributions. There you go. That's mysticism. That is artistry. That is prophetic. All three, they're in all of it moving forward. We can go into the literary. Tavia Butler is a prophet. A prophet. Now, her books can be very painful to read. Make sure you're in a stable space because when they go dark, they go dark. Like she will take you into the ugly face of humanity and show it to you. We will not be able to look away, and you will not be able to forget what you've seen, but she will also show you the beauty. And it's a shame we lost her so young. It's a shame we lost her so young. And we can say the same thing for N.K. Jemisin, who's currently writing a lot of her work. Broken Earth Trilogy will do the same thing for you, and a lot of her work will move you like that. There are a lot of great voices out there that we need to find and we need to proclaim from the rooftops and we need to celebrate, but not just them. We've talked a lot about Kendrick Lamar here, and I will never be a Kendrick Lamar for so many reasons. But that doesn't mean that I am going to neglect my artistry. I'm going to be inspired by his artistry. I want to be inspired by SZA's artistry. I want to be inspired by that art to continue making my own. And that is a big part of what we need to be doing. Bringing up others with us, not forgetting where our inspirations come from, not getting to broadcast that love and that amazing voice that got us to where we are, but also remembering deep down in our heart of hearts to continue doing the work. Because it's not just about appreciating the arts and the via creativa, which we should be doing, but it's about participating as well.
I just wanted to share this a little bit as we're heading out here. So, can you promise you won't take your gifts for granted? I promise I'll use my gifts to bring understanding for every man, woman, and child. How much can you vow? I vow my life to live one in harmony now. And that's it
That's from
right
Reincarnated.
there. Reincarnated by Kendrick Lamar.
And that really is the message of the via creativa and where we're at as a people right now.
Yeah. And I guess that's my bit of homework for everybody else. If you haven't already listened to it, or maybe go back and listen to it again, take some time today. Just listen to the song once. Really listen to the lyrics. It's such an amazing, powerful journey,
Mhm.
and really relates to everything we're saying here.
And it takes you through the life of Johnny Lee Hooker and Billie Holiday. And then he recounts his own life up to
Yep.
this point. And the song ends with him having an argument with God that is
Yeah.
so powerful, so strong, and so my everything right now.
Yeah. And
So,
a struggle with humility.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so I hope that this episode has helped you all a little bit. I hope that it's been a nice break. We've been on some very serious topics, and I know I weaved into some very serious topics. We're trying to kind of go back and forth because we need to acknowledge the darkness that we're in, but we also need to be bringing that light out. And hopefully, we've inspired you to do some creativity and some art. I would love to know who are your favorite Black musicians, writers, artists, any of that. Please put them in the chat. Put them in the comments. If you're listening to us on YouTube or Spotify, you put them right there. If you're listening to us anywhere else, even if they say that you can leave a comment, they don't let us know, so we will have no idea. But you can leave a comment there anyway, because engagement is magic. And then head over to creationspaths.com, click on chat, and you can leave us a message there. We will see it and be able to get back to you, brain fruit style. While you're there, if you feel inclined to do so, we offer a monthly and annual membership. And you can also support us on Patreon and Ko-fi. I am CE Dorset on both. Thank you to everybody who does that. That money helps us to keep a roof over our heads, food on the table, and power on. So thank you again to everybody who does that. Y'all are amazing. If you don't have any money to give right now, or if you're not sure that we're the kind of people that you want to give your hard-earned treasure to, I completely understand that. But if anything that we have done has been helpful to you, or you think you know somebody who would like it, please share it with them, because that is really why we were doing this, to just celebrate life and fight to preserve it. That's kind of, at the end of the day, what everything that we do is about. And before we go, oh, blessed Awen that flows through all creation, that is the inspiration in every song, every poem, every painting, every book. Arise in us and inflame us and make us drunk with inspiration, and guide our hands to and voices and feet to make the art that we are called to make. Amen.
Amen.